On a frosty morning, the first rays of warm sunlight coming through trees are just a magical thing. I wanted to try and capture this, and I knew that I had to use a combination of warm and cool colours in order to get the effect that I wanted. Building it up with a few simple washes to start with, keeping my colours clean because I didn't want to start mixing my cold colours with my warm to get greys. Putting in the basic shapes here, just indicating roughly where that light is going to be. That's the main starting point for this. Also keeping the sun itself as the white paper, because there's nothing brighter in watercolour than the white of the paper. And you can see that I'm now contrasting that with the warm colours around it and the cooler colours, the blues and purples, which are going into the shadow areas on the ground. When that's dry, start building up a little bit of colour over the top of that and softening my edges as I go. When that's dry again, build up another layer. And this is successive layers of colour going one over the other here. So I'm trying to build up a depth within that landscape and go gradually from light to dark, which is the way that watercolour works. So here I'm going in with some stronger purples and sort of deep oranges, and that's starting to give me a lot more contrast in my painting. I'm placing them in, but then wiping back using water and softening them all down as I go. The strength of the light also depends on how strong I'm going around it. So if I want bright light, I have to go darker. And that's what I'm doing there. I'm putting a lot more colour into that landscape below, bringing a little bit of the warmth of the sunlight down into the ground just by adding into the wet wash. But then when that's dry again, going back to the top and darkening off even further. Watercolour dries a lot lighter than when you put it on, and it can be very disappointing. In fact, it still gets to me after all this time. But multi-layering like this is a great way to overcome some of that. So here I'm boosting up those oranges using more pure pigment. Get those beams radiating away from the sun, and then start to contrast that with a little bit of darkness in the trees which are underneath it all. Then come into the foreground and add variations into that, get some different tones going on and some texture in there. And finally, put that tree in. Now that tree's got a lot of character, so I want to be careful with the drawing of it and make sure those branches are interesting. I don't want to have a pure, strong silhouette here, so I've put it in lightly to start with, and I'm going to darken up in the places where it's going to be in proper shadow, but let a little bit of light come through it and around it as well. So a little bit more texture work in the foreground. Make sure that tree is hitting the ground in the right sort of place. It's important as far as the depth and perspective is concerned. And now coming to the branches and the leaves, those need to have colour variations and tonal variations. So I'm putting them in loosely, but I'm very aware of that. There's going to be warm and cool within those, the same as there is in the rest of the landscape. I don't want to overdo it. I want the light coming through them. So I'm taking my time with it, here and there using the point of the brush to just draw fine branches and a few leaves and things, changing the colours as I go, using some pure oranges and yellows as well as the dark purples. Wiping back a little bit, taking some of that strong colour out to help bring the light through. Now it was a frosty morning, and to accentuate that I'm using a little bit of zinc white here to give me some of that sort of dense mistiness you get. So the opaque character of that colour is going to contrast with the transparency of the light. Now I'm adding in some more warmth into the top of the tree and boosting a little bit more of that white down at the bottom. wasn't quite strong enough. And then add a little bit more character in, a few fine branches into the tree. Make sure that's finished. There's more time spent on the tree than pretty much anything else here. Incidentally, if you like this and you want to see more, then I've got the full demonstration on my Patreon channel. And a couple of small trees off to the side there, which are going to help with the depth and the perspective. So a touch more of the white, and I couldn't resist adding a few cows off in the mist in the background. And here's the finished painting.